Have you ever wondered whether a single thought could change the course of your life? Not just emotionally, but physically. Could fear make your heart race? Of course. Could anxiety raise your blood pressure? Absolutely. But what if the effects go much further than that? What if the brain could also influence your immune system, your hormones, your pain, your heart, and perhaps even your chances of survival? It sounds almost unbelievable. For centuries, people believed the mind and the body were separate. Emotions belonged to one world. The body belonged to another. Modern science tells a very different story. Every thought you have, every emotion you experience, every expectation you carry is translated into electrical signals, chemical messengers, and biological reactions throughout your body. Your brain never simply observes, it constantly communicates with your heart, your lungs, your digestive system, your immune cells, even your genes. This communication never stops. Every second of every day, your brain is helping shape the internal environment that keeps you alive. That doesn't mean your thoughts possess magical powers. Positive thinking alone cannot cure cancer. Negative thinking alone cannot create disease from nothing. Science simply doesn't support those claims. But there is something equally fascinating. Your expectations can change the way your body functions. Sometimes, far more than most people realize. Researchers have spent decades studying a remarkable phenomenon known as the placebo effect. A patient receives a treatment with no active medical ingredient, perhaps a sugar pill, perhaps a saline injection, perhaps even a fake surgery, and yet, some patients genuinely improve, their pain decreases, their anxiety becomes less severe. Brain scans reveal measurable changes in neural activity. The improvement isn't imaginary. The treatment may be inactive, but the brain's response is very real. Even more surprising, there is another phenomenon, one that receives far less attention. It is known as the nocebo effect. Nocebo represents the harmful effects of negative expectation. When people strongly expect something harmful to happen, their bodies may begin producing symptoms, even when no physical danger actually exists. Pain can become stronger. Nausea may appear. Headaches develop, heart rate changes, blood pressure shifts, stress hormones rise. These are not acts. They are genuine biological responses. The brain acts on what it believes. To understand why, we need to look back in human history. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human brain evolved for one primary purpose: survival. Your ancestors survived not because they were always right, but because they were cautious. Imagine hearing movement in tall grass. Was it simply the wind or a predator? Evolution favored brains that reacted quickly. Better to overreact than to underreact. That ancient survival system still exists inside every one of us today. The problem is, modern life is very different. Most of us no longer face wild animals, yet our brains still respond to perceived threats, as if survival itself were at stake. A stressful email, a frightening medical diagnosis, financial uncertainty, loneliness, or simply believing that something terrible is about to happen. Your brain often cannot distinguish between an immediate physical threat and a powerful psychological one. Both activate many of the same biological systems. Your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, cortisol rises, inflammation may increase, the immune system changes its priorities, blood flow shifts, digestion slows, energy is redirected toward survival. For short periods, these changes are incredibly useful. They helped our ancestors stay alive, but when the alarm never turns off, the story changes. Chronic stress has been linked to increased risks of cardiovascular disease, sleep disorders, depression, metabolic dysfunction, and impaired immune function. Researchers now understand that beliefs can alter the release of neurotransmitters. They can influence dopamine, endorphins, stress hormones, even networks involved in pain perception. The brain is constantly predicting the future. It uses past experiences, current information, and expectations to decide how the body should respond. Sometimes, those predictions help protect us. Sometimes, they become part of the problem, and occasionally, they produce effects so extraordinary that even experienced physicians struggle to believe what they're witnessing. One of the most remarkable examples occurred inside a hospital, where a man believed he had taken a fatal overdose. What happened next would become one of the most famous demonstrations of the incredible power of human brain. In 2007, doctors published a remarkable medical case. Because of what one man's brain believed, the patient had been struggling with severe depression. He had enrolled in a clinical trial. Like many medical studies, some participants received the experimental medication, others received a placebo. Neither the patients nor the doctors caring for them knew who had received which treatment. One day, after a deeply emotional event, the man attempted to take his own life. He swallowed nearly all of the pills remaining in his bottle, more than 24 tablets, believing he had taken a massive overdose. Within a short time, his body began to fail. His blood pressure dropped dramatically. His heart was racing. He became pale, weak, dizzy, barely able to stay conscious. Emergency medical teams rushed him to the hospital. Doctors worked quickly. They administered intravenous fluids, closely monitored his heart, repeatedly measured his blood pressure. Yet despite their efforts, his condition remained dangerously unstable. Everyone believed the same thing: a serious drug overdose. Then, a physician involved in the clinical trial arrived at the hospital. He immediately checked the study records. The answer was unexpected. This patient had never received the active medication. He had been assigned to the placebo group. The tablets he swallowed contained no active drug at all. As soon as the patient was told, something extraordinary happened. Within minutes, his blood pressure began to rise. His symptoms rapidly improved. His heart rate normalized. The overwhelming fear that had convinced his brain he was dying disappeared. And so did the crisis. The pills themselves had not poisoned him, but his expectation had triggered a powerful biological response. This case became one of the most striking demonstrations of what scientists call the nocebo effect. Imagine receiving a diagnosis, reading the list of possible side effects, or hearing someone tell you, "This medication often causes headaches." Interestingly, studies have shown that people informed about possible side effects report those symptoms far more often, even when they receive an inactive pill. The expectation itself changes perception, changes physiology. Brain imaging studies reveal that negative expectations activate networks involved in fear, pain, and stress. The amygdala becomes more active, stress hormones increase, certain neurotransmitters shift, pain pathways become more sensitive, the body responds, as though danger has already arrived. This is not pretending, it is biology. One fascinating example comes from pain research. Volunteers were exposed to identical painful stimuli. Nothing changed physically. The only difference was what they were told beforehand. Those expecting greater pain actually experienced greater pain. Brain scans confirmed it. Regions involved in pain processing became significantly more active. Expectation changed reality, at least the reality experienced by the brain. This makes sense when we consider how the brain works. Your brain does not passively record the world. It constantly predicts it. Neuroscientists sometimes describe the brain as a prediction machine. Every second, it compares incoming information with expectations built from past experiences. Most of the time, these predictions help us respond quickly, but sometimes, the prediction itself becomes powerful enough to shape what we experience. It also explains why reassurance, trust, and confidence in treatment can influence recovery. The opposite is equally true. Fear, hopelessness, catastrophic thinking. These can amplify suffering, not because the illness is imaginary, but because the brain is part of every symptom we experience. Perhaps nowhere is this more surprising than in Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's develops because brain cells that produce dopamine gradually deteriorate. Dopamine plays a critical role in movement. Researchers have discovered something astonishing. When some Parkinson's patients believe they are receiving an effective treatment, their brains actually release measurable amounts of dopamine, even when the treatment is only a placebo. Brain scans have confirmed this. The expectation of improvement can activate some of the very biological pathways involved in the disease itself. No, placebos do not cure Parkinson's. The underlying disease remains, but symptoms can temporarily improve. The brain responds to hope. Scientists have observed similar findings in studies involving chronic pain, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, and even certain aspects of depression. Again, medical treatment remains essential. But alongside medicines, surgeries, and therapies, there is another factor quietly influencing recovery: the brain's interpretation of what is happening. And this brings us to a profound question. If fear can make symptoms worse, if expectation can influence pain, if belief can alter blood pressure, and if hope can activate measurable biological changes, what happens when these processes continue, not for hours, but for years? Could the way we think, the stress we carry, and the emotions we repeatedly experience gradually shape the way we age? Modern science suggests the answer may be far more interesting than most people imagine. So, does this mean that simply thinking positively can guarantee good health? Not at all. Science asks us to be more careful than that. Optimism is not a substitute for medicine. Hope cannot replace surgery. Belief alone cannot eliminate viruses, repair broken bones, or remove cancer cells. And yet, there is another truth. Your state of mind can influence the environment in which your body functions. To understand why, we need to meet one of the body's most important survival systems, the stress response. Imagine walking alone through a forest. Suddenly, you hear a loud crack behind you. Before you even know what caused the sound, your brain has already begun preparing for action, within fractions of a second. The amygdala, one of the brain's emotional alarm centers, signals that danger may be present. Your sympathetic nervous system activates. Adrenaline surges into your bloodstream. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing becomes quicker. Blood is redirected toward your muscles. Your pupils widen. Your liver releases stored glucose. You become stronger, faster, more alert. This response has protected human beings for hundreds of thousands of years. Without it, our ancestors would never have survived. The problem is that the brain often reacts the same way, whether the threat is physical or psychological. An argument, loneliness, the fear of growing older, even imagining worst-case scenarios can repeatedly activate many of the same biological systems. Unlike our ancestors, modern stress rarely lasts for only a few minutes. For many people, it continues for weeks, months, even years, and that changes everything. One hormone plays a central role in this process: cortisol, often called the stress hormone. Cortisol itself is not the enemy. In healthy amounts, it helps regulate metabolism, supports the immune system, maintains blood pressure, and prepares the body to meet challenges. The problem arises when cortisol remains elevated for too long. Over time, persistently high stress hormones have been associated with increased inflammation, reduced sleep quality, higher blood sugar, loss of muscle mass, impaired memory, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. The body was designed to survive emergencies, not to remain in emergency mode forever. Researchers have also discovered something remarkable about the immune system. For many years, scientists believed the brain and the immune system operated almost independently. Today, we know they communicate constantly. Immune cells respond to signals from the nervous system. The brain receives chemical messages from the immune system in return. Together, they form an intricate communication network. When stress becomes chronic, this conversation changes. Certain inflammatory molecules may increase. The body's ability to respond appropriately to infection may become less efficient. Healing can slow. Recovery may take longer. One fascinating area of research involves biological aging itself. Inside every cell, our chromosomes are protected by tiny structures called telomeres. You can think of them as protective caps. Each time cells divide, telomeres naturally become shorter. This is a normal part of aging. Researchers have found that chronic psychological stress may be associated with faster telomere shortening. The findings are still being investigated. Many factors influence this process, but the possibility is fascinating. Could years of chronic stress actually accelerate certain aspects of biological aging? Scientists continue searching for answers. Another line of research has focused on optimism. Large population studies have repeatedly found that people with a more optimistic outlook often live longer, on average. They also tend to experience lower rates of cardiovascular disease, better physical function in later life, and greater resilience following illness. Why? No one believes optimism works by magic. Instead, optimistic people often make healthier choices. They are more likely to exercise, more likely to maintain social relationships, more likely to follow medical advice, more likely to recover emotionally after setbacks. Their biology and their behavior interact continuously. This is why emotional health deserves far more attention than it often receives, not because happiness guarantees perfect health, but because emotional well-being creates conditions that support healthier physiology. Consider two people facing the same diagnosis. Both receive identical medical treatment. One feels completely alone, convinced that nothing will ever improve. The other, although frightened, maintains hope, feels supported, trusts the medical team, continues eating well, sleeping, moving, connecting with loved ones. Neither person controls the disease through thought alone, but their brains are sending very different signals to the rest of their bodies, and over weeks, months, or years, those differences may matter. Modern neuroscience is gradually revealing something extraordinary. The brain is not merely the organ that thinks, it is the organ that coordinates life itself, and every day, whether we realize it or not, it is listening. So, can the human brain actually kill the body? The answer is both simpler and more fascinating than many headlines suggest. In most situations, no. A healthy person cannot simply think themselves into death. Thoughts are not supernatural forces. They cannot override the laws of biology. Medicine exists for a reason. Science has transformed human health, because diseases require real treatments. But this is not the end of the story. The brain is not a passive observer. It constantly influences the body through the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the immune system. Every expectation, every fear, every feeling of safety is translated into biological signals. Most of the time, these changes are small, temporary, perfectly normal. Occasionally, they become surprisingly powerful. Throughout history, physicians and anthropologists have described rare cases in which people appeared to decline rapidly after becoming absolutely convinced they had been cursed, poisoned, or doomed to die. Some researchers have referred to these reports as voodoo death. Even today, scientists continue debating exactly how these tragic events occur. The evidence remains limited. Many historical reports lack the medical details needed for firm conclusions, but they remind us of an important possibility. Extreme fear, combined with an overwhelming sense of hopelessness, may trigger profound physiological responses. The exact mechanisms are still being investigated, and many questions remain unanswered. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that the brain is constantly interpreting the world around us, and those interpretations influence the body. Imagine waking up every morning believing, "My body is failing. Nothing I do matters. I will never improve." Those thoughts may increase stress, reduce motivation, disrupt sleep, encourage unhealthy behaviors, increase isolation. Over months, those changes can quietly accumulate. The healthiest mindset is not believing that nothing bad will ever happen. It is believing that whatever happens, you will continue taking the next helpful step. Researchers studying healthy aging have discovered something interesting. The people who age most successfully are rarely those who avoid every challenge. Instead, they tend to adapt, recover, remain socially connected, continue learning, maintain purpose, stay physically active, protect their sleep, manage stress, and keep looking toward the future. These habits are not separate from the brain. They shape the brain, and the brain, in turn, shapes the body. Perhaps that is the most extraordinary discovery of all. The relationship works both ways. Healthy food nourishes the brain. The brain influences food choices. Exercise strengthens the body. The brain determines whether we begin moving. Sleep restores the brain. The brain regulates sleep. Everything is connected. A conversation that lasts for an entire lifetime. So, if there is one message worth remembering, it is this: treat your brain as carefully as you treat your heart. Protect it from chronic stress. Challenge it with learning. Feed it nutritious food. Allow it time to rest. Move your body every day. Stay connected with people who matter. And perhaps most importantly, be careful about the story you repeat to yourself, because your brain is always listening. Not every thought becomes reality, but every repeated thought has the potential to influence your biology, your behavior, and ultimately, your future. The remarkable thing about the human brain is not that it possesses mysterious powers. Its true power is that it quietly shapes thousands of small decisions. Every single day, those decisions determine whether we exercise, whether we sleep, whether we remain hopeful, and over a lifetime, those ordinary choices become extraordinary outcomes. The science of healthy aging is teaching us something profoundly encouraging. Longevity is rarely determined by a single miracle. It is built one habit, one decision, one day at a time. Your brain is your greatest partner. Treat it with respect, train it with patience, care for it with consistency, and it may help you enjoy not only a longer life, but a healthier, stronger, and more meaningful one. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy thoughtful, evidence-based conversations about healthy aging, we invite you to join us. Together, we'll continue exploring the remarkable science behind living longer, living stronger, and living better. Until next time, stay healthy, stay curious, and take good care of your brain.